Bosnia and Herzegovina is marking the 30th anniversary of the Srebrenica massacre, when around 8,000 people, mostly Bosnian Muslim men and boys, were systematically murdered by Bosnian-Serb forces. It was Europe's worst atrocity since the Second World War. Well, our correspondent Guy De Launey is at Srebrenica at the memorial.
This is Potocari Cemetery, and this is opposite the Srebrenica Memorial Centre, where the killing started, really. And these days, the Srebrenica Memorial Centre is a museum. It's got a lot of exhibits connected with the massacre, a lot of documentation. And right at this moment, there is a commemoration ceremony going on in there with a lot of dignitaries. But behind here, you can see all of the gravestones of the people who've been buried at Potocari Cemetery. And they're among the 8,000 people who were murdered during the Srebrenica massacre. And among these graves, there have been 7 graves freshly dug, ready for today's commemoration. And that's because 7 people have been identified over the past year as victims of the Srebrenica massacre, and they will be laid to rest today in a funeral ceremony. And that's going to be the heart of these commemorations, that every year we've got a few more people identified and laid to rest in Potocari Cemetery. And it means that their families can find some sort of peace at last. But as you can see, tens of thousands of people are coming here to pay their respects. It's not just important for the family members of the victims of the Srebrenica massacre, but an awful lot of other people in Bosnia and Herzegovina as well want to remember. And the phrase is "remember Srebrenica." You see that everywhere. People do want to remember.
Guy De Launey there. Well, let's speak to Dr. Jasmine Mujanovic, Senior Fellow at the New Lines Institute. That's a think tank based in Washington, D.C., specialising in the Western Balkans. Welcome to BBC News. We saw there some of the commemorations today. How is this anniversary viewed across the spectrum?
Well, for Bosnia and Herzegovina, the 30th anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide, because of course it was a genocide, not merely a massacre, is a deeply, deeply important occasion. It signifies, of course, the apex horror of a broader genocide that was committed against the Bosniak people during the aggression on Bosnia and Herzegovina by the then regime in Belgrade under Slobodan Milosevic between 1992 and 1995. Unfortunately, we are still dealing with a great deal of systematic denial and negation on the part of governing authorities in the RS entity in Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as the government of Serbia. But for most people in BIH, this is a moment of remembrance. This is a moment of mourning, but it is also a moment of resilience.
You say there, in some entities and some areas, people still refuse to accept that this happened then?
That's right. Unfortunately, in the smaller entity in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is unfortunately where most of the Serb populace lives today, as well as in Serbia, we still have a very hardline political commitment to negationism, to revisionism, and also increasingly, unfortunately, to genocide triumphalism. So what we've seen over the last few years is not merely that the facts of the genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Srebrenica are denied by authorities in Belgrade and Banja Luka, but in fact that the perpetrators are celebrated and glorified.
And so 30 years on, what do you think needs to change to try and unite what remains a divided area over this?
Well, there's a categorical commitment on the part of the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina to build a better future for themselves. This obviously requires greater assistance on the part of, in particular, the European Union, but the international community more broadly, in particular, to bring Bosnia and Herzegovina's constitutional regime in line with the European Convention on Human Rights, as well as binding rulings by the European Court of Human Rights. We still have one of the most hardline sectarian regimes, a deeply illiberal regime in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it is very difficult to imagine lasting peace and reconciliation taking place under such circumstances.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on that story. Jasmine Mujanovic, speaking to us from the New Lines Institute in Washington, D.C. I think we can take you to live images as the remembrance continues on. Those images there, of course, marking 3 decades on since the Srebrenica massacre.